Welcome to week 7. This week's going to be a little bit shorter of a video because we are meeting on Wednesday for a question and answer session and to look at your kinetic type as a class. We'll get to kind of critique, get to know each other a little bit more. So you're already watching this video. This week we are talking about 3D in After Effects. Now you can import 3D objects into After Effects. We won't be doing that in this course, but what we can do is create 2.5D, which is this middle ground between 3D and 2D. Alright, so you can kind of read through these articles. I'll come back to them in a little bit. Then we have our Zoom meeting Wednesday at 9. Bring your kinetic type assignment and any questions that you may have. I have a discussion board here for your Zoom call. If you participate on the call, you'll get points for this discussion. This is just a way to have a little extra if anyone wants to post their assignment here or if you want to discuss things beyond the Zoom call. Here's a place where you can put it. And then we have your 2.5D assignment. So, what is 2.5D? What does all this mean? Well, I just really quickly did something like this in Illustrator to get the side of a building. So what I'm going to do is import building. I'm just going to use the building layer here. Cool. I don't need that composition, I just need this layer. Alright, so before I get started, I'm going to want to center my pivot point to be the center of the building. You'll see as we go along if you need to move the pivot, but let's zoom in a little bit. Okay, so now when you look at your layers, you'll notice that we have a lot of different options here. We will get to what more of these mean, but if you go all the way to the right, there's a 3D cube. And it says 3D layer allows this layer to be manipulated in 3 dimensions. So let's just twirl down so we can see this happening live. Currently, as we know, I can rotate to the left, to the right. I can move to the left and to the right because we are only, and I can move up and down. We are only working in X and Y. So you know if you think of a graph, you have your X and your Y. Well, if I check this on, aka click the empty box underneath it, now look at all of the additional information that I have. Okay, so my position, I can now go left, right, up, down, but now I can come away and towards the camera. Now because this is 2.5D and we're kind of cheating the system here, moving towards or away from us is the same as scale, but you get that feeling and I'll show you that actually it's moving towards and away. So if we go down here where it says active camera, I can look at a top view. Right here is my building. Now you can't see it because imagine it's like a sheet of paper and the sheet of paper is perfectly aligned, so it's just this skinny line right here, we can't see it. But now we can tell that I'm going forward and back in space. So it is different than scale, just looks the same. I'm going to go back to my active camera view. Our orientation allows us to rotate side to side. Now you're gonna see, let me undo this. Orientation and rotation are very similar, but the X, Y, and Z rotation allows us to do, multiple times around. So we can go forward in space, doing little somersaults forward. Full rotations. So it's a really cool addition. I would highly recommend that you bring in something, an image, and try just in 3D to navigate and see all of the new properties that we can make here. Okay? Now, underneath we have, and I don't know if you can see it with my computer, but we have geometry options and material options. There we go. Change renderer. this is something that we can do, again, if you were going to deal more in 3D. We will get into this as we go throughout the term, but for right now, I just want you to focus on how we can rotate and move things. We can also use lighting, which we will get to, but we can cast shadows and do some more things. Okay? So what I want you to think about for your for your assignment this week is creating a 2.5D world or environment and animating it. Okay, so it's a very wide open assignment. You may have to kind of think for a bit with, well, what am I going to make? But, so for instance, if I rotate this a little bit, I could do something like that. I could bring in another version of it, turn it, oh, let me move my anchor point first. Oops. Okay, I'll move this over. And I'm going to deal with the rotations here. Once I turn it 3D here. So what you can do is actually create, and you may need to scale, you may need to, because we're cheating 3D, right? So these are actually the same size, but because of the angles of everything, it might be hard to tell. So if I've got something like this, and I'm actually going to move my anchor points to the bottom here, what I could do is have, you know, a character come in. I could have a UFO come, but let's say I want to knock this building down. So maybe I create a third shape that's a roof that sits nicely on here. You can use the shape tools in here. Again, just remember to be not selected on any of your layers. So click in the negative space, then you can make whatever shapes you want. We will get into masking, which is what happens when you're on a layer and you create a shape, but you can also use the pen tool. So if I knew I wanted, you know, something like that, again, take some time to actually design these things, but just so we get the idea. Then I could say, okay, well, I know at this point I want position, rotation, and opacity on all three of these things. Don't forget hotkey T is opacity, and you can hold shift to bring up multiple ones. So here I want position, rotation, transparency, turn on all those. So I know at this point in time this is where my building is going to be. Let's say, you know, something happens in my animation, and then 2 seconds in, I want this part of the building to fall. So I'm going to set a keyframe here to make sure it stays until 2 seconds, and then at 4 seconds I want to have it fall. So play around with how you want it to fall, and you may need to go in and in between. So let's say something like that. I want it to be flat because it should stay attached to the bottom. And we're going to pull it out. Bring it up a little. Again, you're going to see that it might not click how you would like. So, you know, maybe here I'm like, well, this is very close to the bottom here. I want to move this up a little bit. This this icon here is called a gizmo. So it tells you what, if we're working in X, Y, or Z. So X is generally your left and right across, Y is your up and down, and Z is your forward and away. But you can actually freeform, rotate, move, and do all that in your composition. So if you're like, I can't, it's so hard for me to tell with these numbers, you can actually go in and do it here. So then I'd have something come along, and then Okay, and you can have the other side of the building fall, the roof fall, you can have things crumble. Once it gets towards falling, if you wanted to have it disappear, you know, we could set the transparency, bring it over, and lower that to 0. Apparently it wasn't lowered all the way, but you get the kind of idea here. Okay? And again, it does take more in-betweening, because like right now, see how this is up higher than I would like it? So, you know, we can use our gizmo here to bring this down a little, but you will need to go in and in between. Okay? So you can think about doing this however you want. This is going to be easier when you start with hard edge surfaces. So if you wanted to do a milk carton or a fence or, you know, anything that has 90-degree angles, that's going to be to your benefit. However, that being said, you don't have to. Another cool thing about this, I'm going to delete these keys. We can have things pass between. Okay, so let's say I'm going to have this come forward, and I can scale my other one. I can move this. So I would continue onward, but let's say, you know, this is how you have something set up. We can again look at that top camera to see that I've got one here, and there's this gap in here. So if you wanted to, you could bring in something else and have it go between the two, which you could also fake just having the layers in your layer order. But let's say I am doing something here with an amoeba, I don't know, some sort of shape. But I can have it slide behind the layers. Okay, and there's actual space there. So it's just another way to think about things, okay? So take a look at 3D, think about what you want to do. We can talk about it on the Zoom call if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday.